The sun was setting over the jagged peaks of the Blackridge Mountains, casting long shadows across the dense forest below. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and the distant echo of a rushing river. Somewhere in the shadows, a wild doe named Aria stood motionless, her ears twitching at every sound. Her sleek tawny coat blended perfectly with the golden hues of the autumn foliage, but her heart was racing. She could feel the danger in the air. Aria was no ordinary deer. She was the matriarch of a small herd, a family of 6 that included her 2 fawns, Luna and Bramble, her mate, Orion, and 2 younger does, Fern and Willow. They had lived in these mountains for generations, navigating the treacherous terrain with grace and wisdom. But today, their survival was at stake. The trouble had begun at dawn. Aria had been grazing near the edge of the forest when she caught the faint scent of smoke. It wasn't the natural scent of a forest fire. It was sharp, acrid, and carried the unmistakable tang of gunpowder. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but she hesitated. Her fawns were still nursing, and Orion was foraging nearby. He couldn't leave them. Then she saw him, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a rifle slung over his back. His face was weathered, with deep lines etched into his skin, and his eyes were cold and calculating. He moved with the precision of a predator, his boots crunching softly on the fallen leaves. Aria's heart pounded as she realized he was tracking them. She let out a low, warning call, a sound that carried through the trees like a whisper. Orion's head snapped up, and he immediately bounded toward her. The younger does followed, their eyes wide with fear. Luna and Bramble, still unsteady on their legs, stumbled behind. The hunter was relentless. He moved swiftly, his eyes scanning the ground for tracks. Aria led her family deeper into the mountains, her hooves pounding against the rocky terrain. The forest grew thicker, the trees closing in around them like a fortress. But the hunter was skilled, and he was gaining ground. Aria's mind raced. She knew these mountains better than anyone. She had been born here, had raised her fawns here, and had survived countless dangers. But this was different. This hunter was unlike any she had encountered before. He was patient, methodical, and utterly determined. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Aria made a decision. She would lead the hunter away from her family. She veered off the path, her hooves skidding on the loose gravel as she climbed higher into the mountains. Orion hesitated, his eyes locking with hers. She let out a soft, reassuring call, and he nodded. He would protect the fawns. The terrain grew more treacherous as Aria climbed. The air grew thinner, and the rocks became sharper. She could hear the hunter behind her, his breathing heavy but steady. He was close, too close. Then she saw it, a narrow ridge, barely wide enough for her to stand on, stretched between 2 peaks. Below, the ground dropped away into a sheer cliff, hundreds of feet down. Aria's heart pounded as she approached the edge. She had never attempted a jump like this before, but she had no choice. She took a deep breath, her muscles coiling like springs. Then with a powerful leap, she launched herself into the air. For a moment she was weightless, the wind rushing past her ears. Her hooves scrabbled against the rocks on the other side, and she landed with a thud, her legs trembling from the effort. The hunter stopped at the edge of the ridge, his eyes narrowing as he watched her. He raised his rifle, but Aria was already moving, darting into the safety of the trees on the other side. Aria didn't stop running until she was sure the hunter was gone. She doubled back, her senses on high alert, until she found her family hiding in a small cave near the river. Orion greeted her with a soft nuzzle, and Luna and Bramble bounded over, their tiny hooves clicking against the stone. The younger does, Fern and Willow, stood guard at the entrance, their ears twitching at every sound. Aria let out a long, shuddering breath, her body finally relaxing. They were safe, for now. As the sun rose over the mountains the next morning, Aria stood at the edge of the forest, her family grazing peacefully behind her. The hunter was gone, his scent fading into the wind. She knew they would face other dangers in the future, but for now, they had survived. Aria's leap had not just saved her own life, it had saved her family. And as she watched Luna and Bramble play in the morning light, she knew she would do it all over again if she had to. For her family, she would leap across mountains, brave any danger, and face any hunter, because that's what it meant to be a mother, a leader, and a survivor.